Welcome back. Last time we introduced the basic principles of Islamic political thought, and now we want to discuss its development in more detail, focusing on how to understand the separation between spiritual authority and temporal power after the death of the Prophet and the rightly guided caliphs from an Islamic perspective. After the death of the Prophet, the only political precedent Muslims had in selecting a new leader was how a sheikh of a tribe was chosen in Jahili times. Elders would gather and select someone, as mentioned earlier. This practice was more democratic than the Byzantine or Persian politics of succession. After some discussion, the leadership decided that the Ummah would choose members of different tribes, members of a larger community, a super tribe in a sense. Abu Bakr was acclaimed as representing the ruling function of the Prophet. Although there was no more Nabuwah or prophecy, leadership was propagated in the form of Khalifa or Caliph, a Quranic term meaning vicegerent or a person authorized to rule in someone's name. The Quran states that humans are Khalifatullah fil ard. We are God's rulers on earth, which is why we have so much power. But those who use that power to destroy the species on earth have forgotten the other half of our responsibility to God, as Abdullah, his bondsmen or bondswomen. The human state is defined by these two fundamental terms, Abd being passive and Khalifa being the active relationship between heaven and earth. We are keeping the second half of this equation today without the first half. Since we aren't really God, we are murdering ourselves and the planet as a result. In a sense, the tragedy of the modern world can be analyzed in these two terms. So Abu Bakr was titled Khalifat Rasulullah, which is a junior title than everyone else as Khalifatullah, ironically. After the death of Abu Bakr, Omar was selected as the leader of the community and called Khalifat Rasulullah. And after the death of Omar, Uthman was elected as leader of the community, but it became too cumbersome to call him Khalifat Rasulullah, so his title was simply Khalifat Rasulullah. And after the death of Uthman, Ali was elected as Khalifa, although the Shiites do not accept this appellation and maintain he was the first Imam, as we shall see. These four leaders of the early Muslim community are like the apostles, you might say. With Ali's death, the apostolic age of Islam comes to an end. After the tragic death of Ali, which the readings discuss in great detail, the Caliphate institution continues hereditarily with Muawiyah's house, but with less religious power. Muawiyah created institutions which have survived to our day. His was a politics of expediency, without the religious idealism of the rightly guided caliphs or Rashidun. The rule of Muawiyah's house, or the Umayyads, ended about a century later because of dissatisfaction with the political favoritism of the Umayyads, and was followed by the rule of the Abbasids until the 13th century, in 1258, when the Mongols invaded the Islamic world. However, not all of the Islamic world was under the rule of the Abbasids, because the Shiite Fatimids ruled in North Africa for 2 centuries. And one of the Umayyad princes escaped to Spain to establish a caliphate there. He built the city of Cordoba and initiated the golden age of Islamic science and arts. Regarding the theory of the caliphate, Sunni jurists wrote that the duties and criteria of the caliph were as follows. First, the caliph must be from the tribe of the Quraysh and have actual power. Second, protect the borders of the Islamic world. Third, keep civil order based on the hadith that a day of fitna or civil disorder is worse than 100 years of war. Fourth, promulgate the Sharia. And fifth, serve as the head of the military, selecting qadis or judges, muhtasibs, regulators of justice in the marketplace, and so forth, with whose aid he rules without being a great doctor of law himself, which is very different from Shi'ism, as we shall see. Initially, you had the caliph and the ulama, or religious scholars. Harun al-Rashid and al-Ma'mun were the last true caliphs, and by the 9th, 10th centuries, the military power of the Caliph began to be challenged with the rise of local dynasties. These local rulers, or sultans, respected the Caliph but held the power of the sword in their hands. Nevertheless, the Caliph remained the legitimizing institution for political power. As a result of this Caliph-Sultan-Ulama division, the sultan becomes the third pivot of the political situation, and the jurists developed a second phase of theory of the Caliphate. First, the Caliph symbolized the unity of Islam. Second, the sultan held the military political power. And third, the ulama were the guardians of the Sharia. Al-Mawardi wrote Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyya, Injunctions of the King, and Al-Ghazali wrote Nasihat al-Maluk, Advice to Kings. Two treatises that established this theory which lasted for the rest of Islamic history. After the Mongol invasion, the Mamluks of Egypt claimed caliphal titles for a while, and they defeated the Mongols north of Mount Sinai as well as the early Osmanlis. The Ottomans, who succeeded the early Osmanlis, made a comeback and then took this title. They were a small group of Turkish people ruling over Anatolia and only had local claims, but after Tamerlane, they defeated the Mamluks. By the 15th century, they put an end to the Byzantine Empire by capturing Istanbul, establishing themselves as caliphs, but didn't fulfill Mawardi's and Ghazali's conditions of being Qurayshi. They captured Mecca and Medina and became its protectors until 1916, when Lawrence of Arabia was sent to unite the Arabs against the Turks, one of the great ruses of history. The Arabs trusted him, fought against the Turks, and then the British and French decided to divide Arab land between them. The caliphs had a transnational status that eliminated fighting based on the modern notion of nationalism for centuries. The only surviving caliphate today is in Morocco, where the kingship is a remnant of the medieval caliphate which didn't accept Ottoman authority, since eastern Algeria was the limit of the Ottomans. Following the Abbasids, you had three major Islamic empires. First, the Safavids, who reunified Persia. Second, the Mogul Empire ruled over two-thirds of India for 250 years, and in its heyday from Bengal to Punjab and Kashmir to Deccan. And third, the Ottomans. These three empires are the immediate background of the Islamic world. The Moguls fell to the British, whereas the Safavids were succeeded by other empires. But the three empires were seen in the light of the classical theory by Muslims, although the Safavids were an exception, as we shall see, since they were Shiite. With the 19th century advent of nationalism, breakup of the Ottoman Empire, and colonization of the Islamic world, this completely changed the facts on the ground, raising the question of what constitutes an Islamic state. This is a major debate to this day, which we shall discuss at the very end of the course. Now we turn to Shi'ism and Shiite political philosophy.